In the fighting anime, you often see old men being highly respected and praised for their unbelievable strength and unlimited knowledge. Holds enough experience and wisdom paired with their longevity of fighting and training has surely allowed them to become a force to be reckoned with. As Kevin Lax said, beware of an old man in a profession where men die young. Take Whitebeard, Netero, and Yamamoto as examples of being at some point regarded as the strongest forces in their respective verses. And in this video, we'll be taking a look at what would happen if two veterans such as Silver, Fang, and Garp challenged each other for a fight to the death, as both are clearly very similar in so many ways, since not only they are regarded as heroes who allegedly protects the masses, but also had to ultimately fight against their former disciples. And for that I say welcome to this channel. It's time to analyze both of their stats and abilities to find out who would be the strongest old man between the two. In the One Piece manga, there ultimately exist two different power systems. You either eat a devil fruit and gain a random ability that would be effective depends on the user, or be a total badass who heavily relies on Haki mastery to cripple even the strongest devil fruit users. One of the best practitioners of this particular mechanism is a legendary marine who in his prime dominated every pirate not named Roger, Shiki, or Whitebeard. This character is none other than the legendary marine hero Monkey D Garp. Garp till now is regarded as one of the strongest, if not the strongest marine in history. Even at an old age, he's still capable of fighting against the likes of Aokiji, who tangled with Akainu for 10 days straight, making it an extreme difficulty fight. Akainu is the same dude who fought with Whitebeard and eventually survived a devastating hit that destroyed most of Marineford, which means that Garp even now should be on a similar pedestal to the likes of these characters. Some would argue that Kuzan was conservatively holding back due to his wavering resolve, but also was Garp arguably nerfed having to fight multiple pirates at once alongside Aokiji. This is further substantiated with the fact that injured Garp and resolved Aokiji clash causes an explosion that sent both fighters flying, clearly implying that they are equally matched in this specific encounter. So in this particular video, we'd assume that Garp is on a similar caliber of characters such as Aokiji, Akainu, and Old Sick Whitebeard, which means that we're obviously using current Garp and not his prime state. Now, in terms of his general stats and where he scales outside the verse, as I stated in my previous One Piece videos, there exists a variation of ends regarding many characters in One Piece. Sometimes you find many vague and ambiguous statements that creates various interpretations that ultimately leads to different scaling spectrums. Let's take Prime Don Chinjao's feat of splitting the ice continent as an example. Still a very contentious feat in the community, where some say that you can literally see the end of where the ice is split, therefore it is nowhere near the size of a continent. Highly depends on whether you interpret the feat to be valid based on that statement or not. I myself, however, tend to lean towards this not being really the size of a continent. However, I'll still make sure to include this possibility at the end of the video. You see, in order to determine where Garp should fall at in terms of punching power, the most efficient way for me is to use Whitebeard tilting the sea's feat that displayed around 26 teratons of energy, putting him at country level in terms of attack potency at best. And this is obviously due to the comparison between Garp and Aokiji, substantiated with Aokiji fighting against Akainu for 10 days straight, the same guy who is durable enough to survive Whitebeard's attacks. Now, when it comes to how fast Garp can move, generally speaking, One Piece has been decently consistent to characters being capable of fighting and reacting at light speed. It has been clearly and directly stated that Kizaru is faster than light. Different characters has been dodging and intercepting Kizaru's lasers throughout the whole story, and even pre-time skip Zoro managed to do the same thing, which makes him at least relativistic in terms of reaction speed. Post-time Luffy, not only did he dodge several lasers, but also called them slow. You see, Garp sits pretty comfortably at the high tiers of speed in One Piece, managed to blitz Marco, who has been shown consistently reacting to Kizaru's attacks, and also blitz against Aokiji 2 times in their Hashinosu encounter. Aokiji is a top tier character who should be relative to all the admirals, which makes Garp by the very least faster than light in terms of combat and reaction speed. Garp is also clearly a very efficient fighter, uses mastery of Haki as a main weapon to amp his defenses and punching power, and additionally raises his perception and reactive senses to a much higher level. Although it's still very ambiguous if he can utilize future sight, since the only indication that he could is when he sensed Shiryu's strike over Kobe. However, that's still not confirmed to be a future sight case. But nonetheless, he also has access to an area of effect long-range attacks such as Galaxy Impact, using his advanced usage of Conqueror's Haki, clearly implied that even when he is severely nerfed, his mastery over Haki is still a top tier in the verse. However, how would he deal with a martial artist genius such as Silver Fang? When looking at the S-Class heroes' rankings, you'd see that the number 1 hero can manipulate space and time, the number 2 hero can use telekinesis to literally lift an entire city, and the number 3 hero is just an old guy that masters martial arts. But you see, even when relying on such a simple method to fight compared to the One Punch Man standards, Silver Fang has proven continuously that he is a force to be reckoned with, so much so that Murata himself has stated that Bang and Bomb from 51 years ago were unstoppable. This is certainly terrifying, since even at an old age with no monsterization gifts, he could still tangle with dragon level monsters such as Melzagard, Ugly Fuhrer, Gums, and even monsterized Garu. Now, Silver Fang's martial arts mastery actually plays a big part of how strong he is. You see, the Water Stream Rock Smashing Fist is literally the best offensive and defensive technique, allows him to reflect any types of attacks and redirects them with double the force, which means when Bang is faced against someone who is significantly stronger than him, who heavily relies on his physical strength, he'd still be able to compete and eventually renders him completely useless. Such hacks made Silver Fang almost unbeatable against any character of a similar size. However, in order to bypass this, you either need to counter it with the same technique and overwhelm him with different kinds of martial arts, or simply just be stupidly stronger than its user, as this technique obviously has limits. He can't just redirect Saitama's serious punches, for example, since they are just out of his league. Now, when talking about his general stats and where he should scale in terms of attack potency and speed, it heavily relies on how strong post Darkshine Garu really is. Darkshine himself scales above Carnage Kabuto, who was stated in the databook to being physically wise the strongest monster up to that point, which means he upscales to Transformed Vaccine Man, who in his base performed a city level plus feat. You see, according to the databook, when Vaccine Man transforms, he gains a drastic increase in terms of his fighting strength. And if we go ahead and assume that Transformed Vaccine Man is at least a 2 times amp, then that should put him at mountain level in terms of attack potency, meaning characters like Darkshine should sit comfortably at island level of punching force. And as all of you already knows, Silver Fang and Garu are literally on a different pedestal compared to Darkshine, which places them by the very least in the ranges of large island to possibly small country level in terms of attack potency. This is substantiated with Garu performing a continental level feat right after that fight against Sage Centipede. But nonetheless, Bang's durability should also scale relative to his attack potency, as there are no evidence to suggest otherwise. Now, when it comes to how fast Silver Fang can react and fight, it would as usual all depends on which meta you wanna ultimately use. However, in any case, Silver Fang should be on the light to faster than light spectrum of speed. If you wanna go ahead and rely on calcs, then Atomic Samurai stopping G5's laser was calced at 4 times the speed of light, which means that Silver Fang should operate at somehow similar levels, since Atomic Samurai sees Bang as a rival that needs to surpass. But if you are someone who doesn't rely on calcs, then a character like Genos was seen dodging lasers that were confirmed to hold the properties of light, and Awakened Cockroach also claimed he can move and react react at the speed of light. Now, there is a huge contention in the community of whether Silver Fang is stronger than Flashy Flash or it's the other way around. This all comes from whether the Garu who fought Bang is weaker or stronger than the one who fought Flashy Flash. I personally still lean towards Flashy Flash being stronger and considerably faster, but strictly speaking, despite Silver Fang not being as fast as Flashy Flash, he should at least be relative, putting him at least at the faster than light levels in terms of speed. You see, Silver Fang and Garp are both retired from being heroes. They now also both focuses on training their disciples to build a stronger generation. Now, before we start uncovering how this fight would go, I feel like it's very necessary to state a few points that I deem important to have a more well-thought outcome for this fight. First one being that although we somehow understand how strong they both are in their old stages, we can't really give a definitive answer to how tough they were in their prime. The degree of how much they declined is certainly very ambiguous. Although you can say that Prime Garp easily scales to the likes of Roger and Whitebeard, Bang's prime can't be scaled to no one in the verse. Remember that according to Murata, Prime Bang was described to being unstoppable, certainly a very impressive description when tied to how ridiculously strong the One Punch Man verse is. But at the end of the day, we sadly just don't know the level of competition provided in that generation. So for this specific video, to make things fair and clear, we'd only be talking about their current stats, not their prime. Second main point is tied to the verse equalization. I will say that I'm a huge advocate of believing that this concept really is not fair for the majority of times. I wouldn't be saying ridiculous things like Silver Fang would be able to master Haki or Garp can use Awakened Breath, but at the same time, that doesn't mean I wouldn't be following the no limit fallacy, as I think Garp's Conqueror's Haki wouldn't be able to knock out Silver Fang despite not being from the same series. Verse equalization usually complicates things and we definitely can't have a fair outcome. Meaning, Bang would be using his Awakened Breath from the get-go and Garp would have access to all of his Haki's abilities. Alright, now starting from a stat perspective, you could clearly deduce that Garp, while being downplayed, is literally one tier above Silver Fang in terms of attack potency and speed. And if you want to go by calcs, then there are numerous generally accepted threats putting characters on the country level in terms of attack potency that Garp should upscale to and far surpasses. However, even at a lowball estimation in terms of attack potency, he'd still be able to cripple Silver Fang and inflict a great deal of damage if he ever managed to connect. Which brings us to the most important question regarding this matchup: can Garp bypass Silver Fang's Water Stream Rock Smashing Fist? Now, to answer this question, it's very important to understand how this technique works. You see, when Garu fought Tank Top Master, it was pretty evident that Master just outscales him in terms of overall physical strength. However, that fact did not matter since the Water Stream Rock Smashing Fist was the most pressing ability that Tank Top Master didn't have an answer for. Despite being significantly stronger, Garu was still able to reflect all of his hits and redirect them with double the force, overcoming him despite the clear supremacy in terms of strength. Tank Top Master goes to explain later that this technique is literally built to essentially cripple brawlers who relies only on physical strength by focusing on joints and vital spots. And Silver Fang is without a doubt far better than Garu in this particular aspect. Now, you could argue that this fight would literally be the same case but on a larger scale, and therefore Silver Fang's techniques would certainly work on Garp, since Garp in most cases only relies on the power of his fist. He is certainly not a martial artist, and even if he is, very few can counter this specific technique, which means that he'd learned the hard way that this is not the opponent you don't want to be creative against, leaving Garp only two options, which is either rely on a long-range attack such as the Galaxy Impact, since Bang can't really deflect shockwaves, or simply up the speed to the point that Bang can't really deflect what he can't see. Now, if we are abiding by One Piece characters being faster than light without even the usage of calcs, then honestly someone like Garp should be able to contend with Silver Fang as they fall under the same logic of speed. Both series has light speed metas involving lasers early on in the series, series that both Silver Fang and Garp should heavily surpass, with also calcs generally putting them at nearly the same tier of speed. Although to make things fair, I would say that Garp definitely has a better claim of being slightly faster, with scaling to Sanji's faster than light plus calc. With this logic, he could amp his speed further by going all out to bypass Silver Fang's technique, as stated in chapter 49, that Garou needs to have these synapses to read his opponent's moves in order to deflect them. However, I would say that the first option seems to be more logical in this sense, since not only Garp can use long-range attacks, but can also arguably infuse advanced Conqueror's Haki to inflict attacks on Silver Fang without even touching, which would be a perfect counter against the Water Stream Rock Smashing Fist technique, since Bang would be missing the right momentum to deflect these attacks. Strictly speaking, on the stamina and endurance standpoint, Garp's tank should allow him to stay longer in the fight, as characters on the same tier in One Piece has been shown to be incapable of fighting up to 10 days straight. Now as for Silver Fang, I think his best option to win is to combine both the Water Stream Rock Smashing Fist and the Exploding Heart Release technique to effectively take Garp down. If you want to go by a narrative perspective, then Bang certainly shouldn't have a problem of using his former technique, since he's not really fighting his student that wants to bring him back to the light with a technique that shows no killing intent behind it, just as his brother did for him in the past. And on the other hand, Garp would sense that Bang is holding back, wouldn't like it, and he'd say the same thing as he said to Aokiji. Wavering is a sign of weakness. With this, if Bang uses this technique that allows him to surpass his own limits, paired with using the Water Stream Rock Smashing Fist, then he would have a decent shot of taking Garp down. Which means for this fight, you'd need to take some creative liberties to come up with how this fight would exactly go, with both evidently having the specific tools to take down each other. So in this sense, I would say that this fight is extremely close and highly depends on the planning of these two characters. However, I would like you to understand that admittedly, Garp is heavily downplayed, especially in the attack potency department, as if you want to take Don Chinjiao's meta for example, or way upscale him to the likes of Dressrosa's Zoro that has a CAC putting him at country level in terms of attack potency, it would certainly raise his chances of winning way higher. As I stated in the Silver Fang's part, no matter how crazy good the technique is, there is always a limit to how much it can handle, and Garp could possibly reach and highly surpass that limit, which ultimately means that when accounting to Garp's high-end physical stats, he should be more than capable of winning this fight.